Aboard the opulent midnight train to Vienna in 1935, a scream pierces the night and a priceless sapphire necklace vanishes. When a brilliant psychiatrist is found stabbed in a locked compartment, only Hercule Poirot, the world's greatest detective, can unravel the web of secrets among a cast of suspects: a glamorous baroness, a flamboyant opera singer, a shady businessman, a secretive governess, a vengeful émigré, and a nervous maid. As the train races toward Vienna, Poirot's little gray cells uncover a cunning plot of theft, betrayal, and murder, where nothing is as it seems. Will he solve the mystery before the final stop? Chapter 1. The Departure from Paris. The Gare de l'Est shimmered under the golden haze of a Parisian dusk, its vast concourse alive with the hum of travelers and the sharp whistle of departing trains. Hercule Poirot, his small, precise figure, immaculate in a tailored overcoat and gleaming patent leather shoes, stood beside his friend Captain Arthur Hastings, surveying the scene with an air of quiet satisfaction. The Belgian detective's mustache, waxed to perfection, twitched slightly as he inhaled the crisp October air, tinged with the scent of coal and anticipation. "Mon ami," said Poirot, adjusting his Homburg hat, "there is no stage more splendid than a grand railway station. Here one observes the drama of humanity, its vanities, its secrets, its haste." Hastings, less inclined to philosophize, shifted his suitcase and glanced at the towering clock. "Splendid or not, Poirot, we'd best board before the midnight train to Vienna leaves without us. I'm rather looking forward to a quiet journey. A holiday, for once." Poirot's green eyes glinted with amusement. "A holiday, Hastings? For you, perhaps. For Poirot, the little gray cells, they are never at rest." The midnight train to Vienna, a marvel of engineering and elegance, gleamed under the station's electric lights. Its polished black and gold carriages promised luxury, their windows reflecting the bustling platform like mirrors of a bygone era. Porters in crisp uniforms darted about, loading trunks and escorting passengers, while the engine hissed softly, impatient to begin its journey through the heart of Europe. As Poirot and Hastings ascended to their first-class compartment, Poirot's gaze swept over their fellow travelers. The first-class carriage was a microcosm of wealth and intrigue, its occupants as varied as the notes of a symphony. At the platform's edge stood Baroness Ilse von Kram, an Austrian aristocrat whose raven hair and alabaster skin drew every eye. Her fur stole and emerald-green gown spoke of wealth, but it was the sapphire necklace at her throat, the famed blue star, that caught Poirot's attention. Its deep, luminous glow seemed to pulse with secrets. "She is magnificent, is she not?" whispered Hastings, his eyes following the Baroness as she glided toward the train, trailed by a nervous young maid clutching a leather valise. "Magnificent, oui," Poirot murmured. "But observe, Hastings, the tension in her shoulders. Beauty may dazzle, but it often conceals unease." Nearby, Dr. Felix Reinhardt, a German psychiatrist with a lean frame and piercing gray eyes, boarded with a single leather satchel. His movements were deliberate, his expression guarded, as if he carried the weight of unspoken thoughts. Poirot noted the way Reinhardt's gaze lingered on the Baroness before flicking away, a gesture too calculated to be casual. A sharp laugh broke Poirot's reverie. Madame Sophie Dubois, a French opera singer, swept past in a cloud of perfume and crimson silk, her voice carrying over the platform as she bantered with a porter. Her flamboyance was matched only by her reputation, whispered in Parisian salons as both enchantress and opportunist. She paused to nod at Mr. Ivan Petrov, a Russian émigré, whose sallow face and dark, watchful eyes suggested a man accustomed to shadows. Petrov returned her greeting with a curt nod, his hands buried in the pockets of a worn but well-tailored coat. "An interesting assortment," Poirot remarked softly, his eyes narrowing as Miss Clara Henshaw, a prim English governess, hurried aboard. Her plain gray coat and tightly pinned hat contrasted sharply with the opulence around her, yet her quick, furtive glances betrayed a mind far from at ease. Beside her, Mr. Laszlo Kovács, a Hungarian businessman with a florid complexion and a gold watch chain, barked orders at a porter, his voice thick with impatience. The train's whistle sounded, a long, mournful note, and the passengers settled into their compartments. Poirot and Hastings found their own, a cozy haven of polished mahogany and plush velvet. Hastings sank into a seat, stretching his legs with a contented sigh, but Poirot remained standing, his fingers tracing the edge of his silver cigarette case. "You are restless, Poirot," Hastings observed. "Surely you don't expect trouble on a train like this." Poirot smiled faintly. "Expect? No, mon ami. But anticipate? Always." The dining car, where they repaired for supper, was a vision of grandeur. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over damask tablecloths, and the clink of silverware mingled with the low hum of conversation. Conductor Henri Moreau, a wiry Frenchman with a meticulous air, glided between tables, ensuring every detail was perfect. His pride in the midnight train was evident, his every gesture a testament to its flawless reputation. Poirot, seated with Hastings, observed the passengers over his glass of claret. At a nearby table, Kovács held court, boasting of a financial coup in Vienna. "The market bends to those who understand its pulse," he declared, his voice too loud for the refined setting. Madame Dubois, at another table, leaned toward Petrov, her laughter like a cascade of bells. "Oh, Ivan, you are too serious. Tell me, what secrets do you hide behind those eyes?" Petrov's smile was thin, his reply inaudible. The Baroness, dining alone, toyed with her necklace, her fingers brushing the blue star as if to reassure herself of its presence. Dr. Reinhardt, seated across the car, watched her with an intensity that made Poirot's mustache quiver. Miss Henshaw, picking at her meal, seemed to shrink into her chair, her eyes darting toward the Baroness's table. The young maid, Anna Weiss, served in second class, but appeared briefly to deliver a note to Moreau, her hands trembling slightly. As the meal concluded and the train plunged deeper into the night, Poirot leaned toward Hastings. "Observe, mon ami, how each passenger plays a role, yet none is quite what they seem. The Baroness guards her jewel, but also her fears. The doctor watches, but what does he seek? And the quiet ones, Miss Henshaw, Mr. Petrov, they are often the most dangerous." Hastings chuckled. "You see mysteries everywhere, Poirot. It's just a train journey." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Perhaps, but the night is young, and the midnight train to Vienna, it carries more than passengers. It carries secrets." As they returned to their compartment, the train's rhythmic clatter seemed to echo Poirot's words, a prelude to the drama that awaited in the darkness. Chapter 2. The Scream in the Night. The midnight train to Vienna thundered through the darkened French countryside, its wheels a steady metronome against the silence of the night. In their first-class compartment, Hercule Poirot sat upright, his small hands folded neatly over a leather-bound notebook, his eyes half closed but alert. Captain Hastings, less resistant to the hour, had succumbed to a gentle doze, his head nodding against the velvet curtain. The compartment's single lamp cast a warm glow, softening the edges of the mahogany paneling, but Poirot's mind was far from lulled by the train's rhythm. "Mon ami," Poirot murmured, as if to himself. "The night is a canvas for secrets. In darkness, the masks of day slip away." Hastings stirred but did not wake. Poirot's gaze drifted to the window, where the moonless landscape blurred past, a void that mirrored the unease he felt. The dining car's conversations lingered in his memory. The Baroness von Kram's guarded fingers on her sapphire necklace, Dr. Reinhardt's too steady gaze, Miss Henshaw's furtive glances. Each passenger, he mused, was a thread in a tapestry yet to be woven. At precisely 2:03 a.m., Poirot noted the time on his pocket watch. A scream shattered the stillness. It was sharp, raw, a sound of terror that pierced the train's cocoon of luxury. Hastings jolted awake, his eyes wide. Good Lord, Poirot, what was that? Poirot was already at the door, his movements swift yet precise. Quickly, Hastings. The little gray cells, they demand answers. The corridor of the first-class carriage was a flurry of activity, its polished brass lamps casting long shadows. Conductor Henri Moreau, his uniform slightly askew, stood outside the Baroness von Kram's compartment, his face pale but composed. Beside him, Miss Clara Henshaw clutched her shawl, her thin lips trembling as she spoke in a breathless whisper. "It came from there. Her compartment. I heard a struggle, I'm certain." Poirot's eyes narrowed as he approached, his patent leather shoes silent on the carpet. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, you are precise. A struggle, you say? Describe, s'il vous plaît." Miss Henshaw's hands twisted in her shawl. I couldn't sleep. I was reading in my compartment, just across the corridor, when I heard it. A muffled cry, then a thud, as if something or someone fell. Then the scream. It was hers, I know it. The Baroness's door opened before Poirot could respond. Ilse von Kram stood framed in the doorway, her silk dressing gown a cascade of emerald, her face ashen beneath its aristocratic poise. The blue star necklace gleamed at her throat, its sapphires catching the lamplight like frozen flames. "What is this commotion?" she demanded, her Viennese accent sharp. "I screamed, yes, but it was a nightmare, nothing more." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A nightmare, madame? Most curious. May I?" Without waiting for permission, he stepped into her compartment, his eyes sweeping the space. The bed was slightly rumpled, a crystal glass of water undisturbed on the nightstand. The air held a faint trace of jasmine. Her perfume, no doubt, but something else, too. A metallic hint Poirot could not place. His gaze settled on the door's lock, where a faint scratch marred the brass, so subtle it might have been overlooked by a less discerning eye. "Madame," Poirot said, turning to the Baroness, "this nightmare? It was vivid, non? To provoke such a scream?" Her eyes flickered, but her voice remained steady. "I dreamed of a shadow, a man, perhaps, standing over me. It was foolish. I am unharmed, as you see." Hastings, hovering at the threshold, frowned. "A shadow? Sounds dashed unsettling. Are you sure no one was here?" The Baroness's lips tightened. "Quite sure, Captain. I locked my door before retiring." Poirot's fingers brushed the lock again, his expression unreadable. "And yet, Mademoiselle Henshaw speaks of a struggle. Most interesting." Moreau, eager to restore order, cleared his throat. "Monsieur, madame, this is a misunderstanding. The train is secure. I patrolled the corridor at midnight and all was well. Please, return to your compartments." But the corridor was no longer empty. Other passengers had emerged, drawn by the scream like moths to a flame. Madame Sophie Dubois, her crimson robe loosely tied, leaned against her doorframe, her eyes alight with curiosity. A nightmare, Baroness, or something more dramatic? Her tone was teasing, but her gaze was sharp, flitting from the Baroness to Poirot. Dr. Felix Reinhardt, his gray eyes cool and assessing, stood apart, his hands clasped behind his back. "Nightmares often reflect the mind's burdens," he said, his German accent clipped. "Perhaps the Baroness is troubled by something tangible?" Poirot noted the faint challenge in Reinhardt's words, but before he could probe, Mr. Laszlo Kovacs pushed forward, his florid face flushed with irritation. "This is outrageous, disturbing honest passengers in the dead of night. I was in the smoking car until 1, and I heard nothing. Moreau, get this under control." Poirot's gaze flicked to Kovacs. "The smoking car, monsieur? Alone or with company?" Kovacs blinked, then muttered, "Alone, naturally. A man needs peace to think." Mr. Ivan Petrov lingered at the corridor's edge, his dark eyes fixed on the floor. When Poirot addressed him, he started. "I heard nothing," Petrov said softly, his Russian accent thick. "I was asleep." But his fingers, Poirot noted, were clenched, betraying a tension his voice did not. The young maid, Anna Weiss, appeared from the second-class carriage, her plain wool coat thrown hastily over her nightdress. She hesitated, clutching a folded letter, her eyes darting to the Baroness before she slipped it into her pocket. I came to see if all was well," she stammered, her Austrian accent soft but strained. Poirot's smile was gentle but piercing. "Most kind, Mademoiselle Weiss, you are far from your compartment. A restless night, perhaps?" She flushed, murmuring an excuse about checking on the passengers, and retreated. Poirot's eyes followed her, his mind cataloguing her nervousness, the letter, the faint tremble of her hands. As the passengers dispersed, urged by Moreau's insistent politeness, Poirot drew Hastings aside. "This scream, Hastings. It was no mere nightmare. The scratch on the lock, the Baroness's pallor, the maid's hidden letter. These are pieces of a puzzle. And the passengers, they watch each other like players in a game of chess." Hastings rubbed his eyes. "You're seeing conspiracies, Poirot. Perhaps the Baroness just had a bad dream." Poirot's mustache quivered with amusement. "A dream, mon ami? Non. A scream is a signal, a crack in the facade. Something, or someone, threatened Madame von Kram tonight. And Poirot, he will discover what." Back in their compartment, Poirot sat, his notebook open, sketching a diagram of the carriage's layout. The train's rhythm had resumed, but the air felt heavier, charged with the promise of secrets yet to be unveiled. Outside, the night stretched on, vast and unyielding, as the midnight train to Vienna bore its passengers toward an uncertain dawn. Chapter 3. The Vanished Jewel. The first light of dawn crept through the heavy curtains of the midnight train to Vienna, casting a pale glow over the first-class carriage. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels had settled into a hypnotic cadence, but for Hercule Poirot, sleep remained elusive. He sat in his compartment, his small hands folded over a cup of steaming café au lait, his green eyes sharp with thought. Captain Hastings, bleary-eyed from the night's disturbance, yawned as he adjusted his tie. "Poirot," Hastings said, stifling another yawn. "That scream last night, it's got everyone on edge. Do you really think there's more to it than a bad dream?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Mon ami, a scream in the night is rarely without cause. The Baroness von Kram, she hides something, and Poirot, he will uncover it." Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp knock. Conductor Henri Moreau stood at the door, his usually impeccable uniform slightly creased, his face drawn with anxiety. "Monsieur Poirot, a calamity. The Baroness, she says her necklace, the Blue Star, is gone, stolen in the night." Poirot set down his cup with deliberate care. "Stolen, you say? Most interesting. Come, Hastings, let us investigate this theft. The little gray cells, they are eager for work." The Baroness's compartment was a scene of controlled chaos. Ilse von Kram stood by the window, her emerald dressing gown replaced by a tailored gray suit, her composure frayed but intact. Her dark eyes flashed with indignation as she addressed Poirot. "It was here, Monsieur Poirot, locked in my jewel case last night. I checked before retiring. After that, unpleasant disturbance. This morning, it is gone." Poirot's gaze swept the compartment. The jewel case, a delicate affair of ivory and silver, lay open on the dressing table, its velvet interior empty. The bed was neatly made, the glass of water from the previous night untouched. The faint scratch on the door's lock, noted during the night, gleamed faintly in the morning light. Poirot knelt, examining the floor, and his fingers paused over a tiny thread of red silk caught in the window frame, a detail too precise to be accidental. "Madame," Poirot said, rising, "this blue star, it is of great value, oui? And perhaps of great significance?" The Baroness hesitated, her fingers brushing her throat where the necklace had rested. "It is priceless, monsieur. A family heirloom, passed down through generations. Its loss is devastating." Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, frowned. "But the door was locked, wasn't it? How could a thief get in?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A locked door, mon ami, is merely a challenge to the determined mind." Moreau, wringing his hands, interjected. "Monsieur Poirot, I beg you, discretion. The reputation of the midnight train is impeccable. A theft of this magnitude could ruin us. I have searched the carriage, the dining car, even the luggage van. Nothing." Poirot nodded. "Then we shall question the passengers, Monsieur Moreau. A jewel does not vanish without a trace." The dining car, its chandeliers dimmed in the morning light, became Poirot's impromptu court. The passengers, summoned by a grim face, Moreau assembled with varying degrees of reluctance. Poirot stood at the head of the table, his small figure commanding attention, his voice calm but incisive. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, "a grave theft has occurred. The Blue Star, the sapphire necklace of Madame von Kram, has been taken from her locked compartment. I ask for your cooperation. Where were you between 2 and 4 this morning?" Mr. Laszlo Kovacs, his florid face flushed, was the first to speak. "This is preposterous. I was in the smoking car until nearly 1, as I said, and then in my compartment, asleep. I know nothing of jewels." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet, Monsieur Kovacs, Monsieur Moreau saw you near the Baroness's compartment at 1:30. A curious detour, non?" Kovacs sputtered. I was merely stretching my legs. The smoking car is stuffy." Dr. Felix Reinhardt, his gray eyes cool, leaned back in his chair. A thief, Monsieur Poirot, is often driven by impulse, a moment of opportunity, a lapse in vigilance. The Baroness's scream last night, perhaps it distracted her from securing her jewel. Poirot noted the doctor's detached tone. An interesting theory, Doctor. You were in your compartment, I presume? Reinhardt nodded. Asleep until the scream woke me. I saw no one enter or leave the Baroness's compartment. Madame Sophie Dubois, her crimson lips curved in a faint smile, toyed with a strand of pearls. A stolen jewel? How theatrical. Perhaps the Baroness has enemies, Monsieur Poirot. Such treasures attract envy. Her eyes flicked to the Baroness, a challenge veiled in charm. The Baroness stiffened. I have no enemies on this train, Madame Dubois. The Blue Star was locked away. Someone forced their way in. Miss Clara Henshaw, seated stiffly, clutched her handbag. I heard nothing after the scream, she said, her voice brittle. I stayed in my compartment reading. I have no interest in jewels. Poirot's gaze lingered on her. And yet, mademoiselle, you were awake, close to the scene. You heard no footsteps, no sound of a lock being tampered with. Her cheeks flushed. No, nothing. I was engrossed in my book. Mr. Ivan Petrov, silent until now, spoke in a low voice. I slept through it all. Jewels do not concern me. His dark eyes avoided Poirot's, his fingers tapping restlessly on the table. Poirot turned to Anna Weiss, who stood nervously at the edge of the group, her plain coat buttoned tightly. Mademoiselle Weiss, you were in the corridor last night, delivering a message, you said. Did you see anything unusual near the Baroness's compartment? Anna's hands trembled, and she tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. No, monsieur. I was only there briefly for the conductor. I returned to second class immediately. Poirot's smile was gentle but piercing. And this message, mademoiselle, it was from whom? Anna hesitated, her eyes darting to Moreau. I don't recall. It was routine, a request for extra blankets. Moreau frowned, but before he could speak, Poirot raised a hand. Merci, everyone. Return to your compartments, but rest assured, Hercule Poirot will find the Blue Star. As the passengers dispersed, Poirot drew Hastings aside, his voice low. The thread of red silk, Hastings. It matches the scarf Mademoiselle Weiss wore last night. And yet, her fear suggests she is no thief. The Baroness, she is too quick to dismiss enemies. And Kovash, his story shifts like sand. Hastings scratched his chin. You think the scream and the theft are connected? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Connected, oui, but not in the way you imagine. This theft, it is a distraction, a curtain drawn to hide a deeper crime. We must watch, Hastings, and listen. For the truth, it whispers in the shadows. Back in the Baroness's compartment, Poirot examined the window frame again, the red silk thread a silent accusation. The train sped onward, its opulence now tinged with menace as the mystery of the vanished jewel deepened. Chapter 4. A Death on Board. The midnight train to Vienna crossed the German-Austrian border under a sky bruised with clouds, the dawn's promise fading into a gray, oppressive morning. The air in the first-class carriage carried a chill, not merely from the autumn wind seeping through the windows, but from the unease that had settled over the passengers since the theft of the Blue Star. Hercule Poirot, seated in his compartment, sipped a second cup of café au lait, his green eyes fixed on a mental chessboard where each passenger was a piece, their motives yet to be fully discerned. Captain Hastings, ever the barometer of the ordinary man, paced the small space. "This business with the necklace, Poirot, it's got everyone rattled. Do you think the thief will strike again?" Poirot's mustache quivered. "A thief, mon ami, is predictable. But there is something else on this train, something darker. The little gray cells, they sense it." Their conversation was cut short by a sharp cry from the corridor, followed by the frantic voice of conductor Henri Moreau. "Monsieur Poirot, come quickly, a tragedy." Poirot was on his feet in an instant, his small frame moving with the agility of purpose. Hastings followed, his heart pounding. The corridor was a tableau of shock. Moreau stood before Dr. Felix Reinhardt's compartment, his face ashen, his hands trembling as he gestured toward the open door. Inside, the German psychiatrist lay slumped on the floor, his gray eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. A letter opener, its silver handle ornate but stained with blood, protruded from his chest. Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers careful not to disturb the scene. The compartment was tidy, save for the grim spectacle of Reinhardt's corpse. The bed was untouched, suggesting he had not slept. A small ashtray held a charred fragment of paper, its edges curling like a dying leaf. The door's lock was intact, the window sealed tight, its latch unmarred. Poirot's eyes lingered on the letter opener, its blade embedded precisely between the ribs. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured. "A murder, and in a locked room. Most intriguing." Hastings, pale, stammered. "Locked? But how? The window's shut, and Moreau said the corridor was patrolled." Poirot rose, his expression grave. "The how, Hastings, is a matter of mechanics. The why, this is what concerns Poirot. Monsieur Moreau, when did you last see Dr. Reinhardt?" Moreau, struggling to maintain his composure, replied, "At midnight, monsieur, during my rounds. He was in the dining car, writing in a notebook. He seemed preoccupied." Poirot nodded, his gaze returning to the charred paper in the ashtray. Using a pair of tweezers from his pocket case, he retrieved the fragment, noting the faint words, "Blue Star" and "Vienna," scrawled in Reinhardt's precise hand. "A clue, perhaps," he said softly, "or a misdirection." The passengers, summoned by the commotion, gathered in the corridor, their faces a gallery of shock and calculation. Baroness Ilse von Kram, her gray suit immaculate, stood rigid, her voice low but steady. "Dr. Reinhardt was a dangerous man, Monsieur Poirot. He asked too many questions about my necklace, my past. His death is a tragedy, but not a surprise." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Dangerous, madame. A curious choice of words. You knew him, perhaps, before this journey?" Her lips tightened. "Only by reputation. He was inquisitive." Madame Sophie Dubois, her crimson robe replaced by a black dress that clung to her curves, dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, though Poirot noted no tears. "Poor Felix," she sighed, her voice theatrical. "We quarreled once, years ago, but I never wished him harm. Who could do such a thing?" Mr. Laszlo Kovacs, his florid face unusually pale, seemed almost relieved. "A murder. This is madness. I was asleep in my compartment, as I told you, after the smoking car. I saw nothing, heard nothing." Poirot's smile was faint. "And yet, Monsieur Kovacs, your relief is palpable. Did Dr. Reinhardt know something of your business dealings, perhaps?" Kovacs bristled. "Nonsense. I barely spoke to the man." Miss Clara Henshaw, her hands clutching her handbag like a lifeline, swayed slightly, then fainted, collapsing into Hastings's arms. "Oh dear," Hastings exclaimed, easing her to a bench. "She's had a shock." Poirot observed her closely, noting the faint tremor in her fingers as she revived. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, you were awake last night, reading. You heard nothing from this compartment, so close to your own?" Her eyes darted away. "No, monsieur. I was lost in my book. This is dreadful." Mr. Ivan Petrov, standing apart, muttered under his breath, "Justice, perhaps?" His dark eyes met. Poirot's briefly, then dropped, his face a mask of restraint. "Justice, Monsieur Petrov?" Poirot asked sharply. "For what crime?" Petrov shrugged, his voice barely audible. "Some men make enemies. It is the way of the world." Anna Weiss, the young maid, hovered at the corridor's edge, her face pale, but her eyes alert. Poirot noted the way she glanced at the Baroness, then at the floor, as if avoiding the sight of Reinhardt's body. "Mademoiselle Weiss," he said, "you were abroad in the night delivering messages. Did you pass this compartment?" Anna's hands twisted in her coat. "Only briefly, monsieur. I saw nothing unusual. I swear it." Poirot dismissed the passengers, instructing Moreau to secure the compartment. Alone with Hastings, he examined the scene again. The letter opener, he deduced, was from the dining car, its presence in Reinhardt's compartment deliberate. The locked door puzzled him, but a faint mark on the frame, a hairline scratch different from the Baroness's, suggested manipulation. "A wire, perhaps?" Poirot mused, slipped through the keyhole to turn the lock from outside. A clever trick, Hastings, requiring skill and nerve. Hastings frowned. "But why Reinhardt? The necklace is one thing, but murder? It's ghastly." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The theft and the murder, they are threads of the same tapestry, yet woven by different hands. The blue star is a lure, a distraction. Reinhardt's death, it is personal. We must learn what he knew, and who feared him." As the train rattled toward Vienna, the air grew heavier, the opulence of the carriage now a gilded cage. Poirot pocketed the charred fragment, his mind racing. The passengers returned to their compartments, but their glances lingered, each a silent accusation. The midnight train, once a symbol of elegance, now carried a darker cargo, a murderer among its passengers, and a truth Poirot was determined to uncover. Chapter 5. The Web of Motives. The dining car of the midnight train to Vienna, bathed in the muted light of a cloudy afternoon, had lost its air of grandeur. The crystal chandeliers seemed to hang heavier, their sparkle dimmed by the shadow of murder. Hercule Poirot stood at the head of the long table, his small figure radiating authority, his green eyes scanning the assembled passengers like a maestro preparing to conduct a symphony of secrets. The theft of the Blue Star and the murder of Dr. Felix Reinhardt had transformed the train into a stage, and Poirot was determined to lift the curtain on its hidden truths. Captain Hastings, seated to Poirot's right, shifted uneasily. "This is a grim business, Poirot," he whispered. "A thief and a murderer among us. How do you even begin to untangle it?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "With order and method, mon ami. The heart, it speaks through actions, and the little gray cells, they listen." Conductor Henri Moreau, his face drawn with the strain of maintaining the train's reputation, stood by the door, his hands clasped tightly. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice low. "I implore you, resolve this quickly. The passengers are frightened, and Vienna approaches." Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the table. The passengers sat in uneasy silence. Baroness Ilse von Kram, her grey suit impeccable, but her eyes wary. Madame Sophie Dubois, her black dress a study in calculated mourning. Mr. Laszlo Kovac, his florid face flushed with nervous energy. Miss Clara Henshaw, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Mr. Ivan Petrov, his dark eyes fixed on the tablecloth. And Anna Weiss, the young maid, perched at the edge, her face pale but alert. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and deliberate. "We are faced with two crimes, the theft of Madame von Kram's Blue Star and the murder of Dr. Reinhardt. These are not isolated acts, but threads in a tapestry of motive and deceit. I ask you now to speak plainly. What did you know of the doctor, and what brings you to Vienna?" The Baroness spoke first, her Viennese accent crisp. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot, Reinhardt was inquisitive. He asked about my necklace, its history. I admitted to you earlier it was a family heirloom, but I did not say how my late husband acquired it. During the war, from a Viennese collector, under questionable circumstances. Reinhardt knew this, I suspect, and meant to expose me." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Expose you, madame? To whom, and for what purpose?" She hesitated, her fingers brushing her throat where the necklace once hung. "I do not know," but his questions felt like threats. Madame Dubois leaned forward, her crimson lips curving. "Felix was a man who collected secrets, Monsieur Poirot. Years ago, in Paris, we were close. He ended it abruptly, claiming I was too reckless. I saw him watching me on this train, as if he regretted his choice." Her laugh was light, but her eyes were sharp. Perhaps he knew too much about someone here. Poirot noted her deflection. "And you, madame, what takes you to Vienna?" "A performance," she replied airily. "The opera house awaits, but Felix's death, it makes one wonder who else he betrayed." Mr. Kovac, his voice loud with indignation, slapped the table. "This is absurd. I barely knew the man. I'm going to Vienna for business, a deal with a textile magnate. Reinhardt asked me about my investments once in the dining car, but I brushed him off. I had nothing to do with his death or the necklace." Poirot's smile was faint. "And yet, Monsieur Kovac, you were seen near the Baroness's compartment after midnight, and now you admit to speaking with Reinhardt. Your business, it is perhaps not as simple as textiles?" Kovac's face reddened. "I deal in many things, art, antiques, investments. Vienna is a hub for such matters. Reinhardt was nosy, that's all." Miss Henshaw, her voice, barely above a whisper, spoke next. "I knew the Baroness's family years ago in Vienna. I was governess to her cousin's children. I was dismissed for reasons I prefer not to discuss. I met Reinhardt only once at a lecture in London. He asked about my time in Vienna, but I told him nothing." Her hands trembled, and she clasped them tighter. "I'm returning to take a new position, that's all." Poirot's gaze softened, but his question was sharp. "And last night, mademoiselle, you were awake, close to both crime scenes. You saw nothing, heard nothing, beyond the scream?" Her eyes flickered. "Nothing, monsieur. I swear it." Mr. Petrov, his voice low and measured, spoke with reluctance. "Reinhardt was a man who stirred old wounds. In Russia, before the revolution, my family suffered because of men like him, informers, betrayers. I did not know him personally, but his name was familiar. from whispers in émigré circles. I am in Vienna to settle old debts, but not with blood. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Debts, Monsieur Petrov? Of what nature? Petrov's jaw tightened. Personal matters. They do not concern this. Anna Weiss, under Poirot's piercing gaze, shifted uncomfortably. I was a maid in Vienna, but I left after trouble. Reinhardt sent me a message last night through the conductor asking me to meet him. He said he knew something about my past. I went to his compartment but found it empty. I swear I did not harm him. Poirot leaned forward. And this message, mademoiselle, it was written? She nodded, producing a crumpled note from her pocket. Poirot examined it. A brief, typed instruction, unsigned, requesting a meeting at 2:30 a.m. Most curious, he murmured. Typed, not handwritten. A precaution, perhaps. As the passengers fell silent, Poirot paced the length of the table, his hands clasped behind his back. Mesdames et messieurs, we have a web of motives. The blue star, it is not merely a jewel, but a symbol of wealth, of secrets, of past sins. Dr. Reinhardt, he was no ordinary psychiatrist. I have learned he investigated stolen artifacts, including, perhaps, the blue star. His questions threatened someone, perhaps many of you. But who among you feared him enough to kill? The passengers exchanged glances, some wary, others defiant. Poirot continued. The theft and the murder, they are linked, but not as you might think. The blue star was a lure, a distraction. Reinhardt's death, it is the heart of this mystery. Hastings, bewildered, whispered, You mean the thief and the murderer aren't the same? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Precisely, mon ami. The web is complex, but Poirot, he will untangle it. As the passengers were dismissed, the train's whistle sounded, signaling its approach to Vienna. The dining car emptied, but the air remained thick with suspicion. Poirot lingered, his notebook open, sketching connections between the passengers, the jewel, and the dead man. The midnight train, now a vessel of secrets, hurtled toward its destination, carrying a truth that only Poirot's little gray cells could unravel. Chapter 6. The Locked Door Puzzle. The midnight train to Vienna sliced through the Austrian countryside, its polished carriages gleaming under a sky heavy with impending dusk. The Alps loomed in the distance, their peaks stark against the fading light. But within the first-class carriage, the atmosphere was heavier still. The murder of Dr. Felix Reinhardt, coupled with the theft of the blue star, had cast a pall over the passengers, their every glance tinged with suspicion. Hercule Poirot, seated in his compartment, studied a sketch of the carriage's layout, his small hands tracing lines between names and clues. The locked door of Reinhardt's compartment, a puzzle in itself, gnawed at his mind. Captain Hastings, ever the foil to Poirot's precision, leaned against the window, his brow furrowed. This locked room business, Poirot, it's baffling. The door was bolted, the window sealed. How could anyone get in and out without leaving a trace? Poirot's green eyes gleamed. The impossible, mon ami, is merely the improbable in disguise. A locked door is a challenge, not a barrier. The little gray cells, they will find the way. A knock interrupted them. Conductor Henri Moreau, his face etched with strain, entered, clutching a ledger. Monsieur Poirot, I have checked the passenger records, as you asked. Nothing unusual, but the passengers are growing restless. They demand answers. Poirot nodded, rising with purpose. Then let us examine the scene again, Monsieur Moreau. The truth, it hides in the details. Reinhardt's compartment, now sealed by Moreau's orders, was a study in order disrupted by violence. The psychiatrist's body had been moved to the luggage van, but the blood stain on the carpet remained, a grim reminder. The letter opener, identified as a dining car implement, lay in a sealed box, its silver handle gleaming dully. Poirot's gaze returned to the door's lock, where a second scratch, fainter than the one on the Baroness's door, caught his eye. He produced a magnifying glass, examining the mark with care. "A wire, perhaps," he murmured, slipped through the keyhole to turn the bolt from outside, a delicate operation requiring dexterity and patience. "The murderer planned this, Hastings." Hastings frowned. "A wire? That's devilishly clever. But who on this train could manage such a trick?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Someone with steady hands and a clear mind. Let us see what else the good doctor left us." He turned to the ashtray, where the charred fragment of paper bearing the words "Blue Star" and "Vienna" had been preserved. Nearby, on a small writing desk, lay Reinhardt's leather satchel. Poirot opened it with care, revealing a notebook bound in black leather. Its pages were filled with cryptic entries, names, dates, and sums of money written in a code of letters and numbers. Among them, Poirot noted the initials LK and IP, Laszlo Kovacs and Ivan Petrov, perhaps, linked to transactions marked Vienna 1917. A single word, artifacts, appeared repeatedly. "Mon Dieu," Poirot said softly. Dr. Reinhardt was not merely a psychiatrist. He hunted stolen treasures, and his net ensnared some of our fellow passengers. Hastings peered over his shoulder. "Artifacts? You think this is about the Blue Star?" Poirot nodded. "The necklace, it is a thread in a larger web, but the murder, it is personal, not mercenary." Their investigation was interrupted by a summons from Moreau. Anna Weiss, the young maid, had been seen lingering near the second-class carriage, her behavior increasingly nervous. Poirot and Hastings found her in the corridor, her plain coat buttoned tightly, her eyes darting like a cornered animal's. A red silk scarf, identical to the one worn the previous night, was tucked into her pocket, its edge frayed. "Mademoiselle Weiss," Poirot said gently. "The thread of red silk in Madame von Kram's compartment. It matches your scarf. And you were near Dr. Reinhardt's door last night. Speak, I implore you. The truth will protect you." Anna's face crumpled, her hands trembling as she sank onto a bench. "I didn't steal the necklace, monsieur, or kill him. Reinhardt, he knew about me. I fled Vienna 2 years ago after a mistake. I took something, a small brooch, from my employer's house. Reinhardt found out through his investigations. He sent me that note, demanding I meet him, threatening to expose me unless I helped him." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Helped him how?" "He wanted me to watch the Baroness," Anna whispered, "to report if she met anyone, or if she hid the Blue Star. I went to his compartment, but he wasn't there. I swear I didn't touch him." Poirot produced the typed note from his pocket. "This message, it is impersonal. Typed. Did you see Reinhardt write it?" She shook her head. "It came through Monsieur Moreau. I thought it was from Reinhardt." Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings. "Most curious. And your luggage, mademoiselle? May we inspect it?" Anna hesitated, then nodded. In her second-class compartment, Poirot found a small valise, its lining worn but intact. A careful search revealed a hidden compartment, sewn into the fabric, containing a forged Austrian passport, in the name of Maria Schmidt. The photograph was Anna's, but the details were false. "A fugitive, Mademoiselle Weiss?" Poirot asked, his tone kind but unyielding. Tears welled in her eyes. "I had no choice. After the brooch, I was dismissed, disgraced. I couldn't return to Vienna without a new identity. Reinhardt knew. He was using me." Poirot pocketed the passport, his mind racing. "You are not the murderer, mademoiselle, but you are a piece in this puzzle. Return to your duties, but say nothing of this." As Anna retreated, Hastings shook his head. Poor girl, blackmailed by Reinhardt, and now caught up in this mess. But if she didn't kill him, who did? Poirot paced the corridor, his hands clasped behind his back. The locked door, the red silk, the coded notebook, these are not random. The thief of the blue star sought to distract, to create chaos. The murderer, however, sought silence. Reinhardt knew too much about the necklace, about Vienna, about someone on this train. The silk thread, it was placed to implicate Anna, to divert suspicion. Hastings frowned. "You mean someone framed her?" "Précisément," Poirot said. "The murderer is cunning, but not infallible. The scratches on the locks, the typed note, they betray a mind that plans, but also a mind that fears discovery." As the train neared Vienna, its whistle a mournful cry, Poirot returned to his compartment, the notebook and passport in hand. The passengers, scattered in their own compartments, were silent, but their secrets pulsed like the train's rhythm. The locked door puzzle was unraveling, but the heart of the mystery, Reinhardt's killer, remained elusive. Poirot's little gray cells worked tirelessly, piecing together a truth that lay just beyond the horizon. Chapter 7. The Denouement. The midnight train to Vienna slowed as it approached the city, its gleaming carriages framed by the snow-dusted Alps under a twilight sky. The dining car, once a haven of opulence, now felt like a courtroom, its crystal chandeliers casting stark shadows over the assembled passengers. Hercule Poirot stood at the head of the long table, his small figure radiating authority, his green eyes gleaming with the certainty of truth uncovered. The theft of the blue star and the murder of Dr. Felix Reinhardt had woven a tapestry of deceit, and Poirot was ready to unravel its final threads. Captain Hastings, seated beside him, whispered, "This is it, Poirot. You've got that look, the one that means you've cracked it. Who's the culprit?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Patience, mon ami. The truth, it must be revealed with order and method, so all may see the design of the little gray cells." Conductor Henri Moreau, his face a mask of exhaustion, stood by the door, his hands clasped as if in prayer for the train's tarnished reputation to be restored. The passengers sat in tense silence. Baroness Ilse von Kram, her gray suit pristine but her eyes guarded. Madame Sophie Dubois, her black dress a study in restrained drama. Mr. Laszlo Kovacs, his florid face sweating despite the chill. Miss Clara Henshaw, her hands folded tightly. Mr. Ivan Petrov, his dark eyes unreadable. And Anna Weiss, the young maid, perched nervously at the edge, her red scarf absent. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding. "We have journeyed through a night of crime. First, the theft of Madame von Kram's blue star, then the murder of Dr. Felix Reinhardt in a locked compartment. These acts, they are not separate, but entwined, each a reflection of the other's purpose. Tonight, Hercule Poirot will reveal the truth. He turned to the Baroness, his gaze piercing. "Madame von Kram, let us begin with the blue star. You claimed it stolen, yet Poirot declares it was never taken. You hid it yourself, did you not, to draw out Dr. Reinhardt, whom you suspected of investigating your family's wartime dealings?" The Baroness's lips parted, her composure faltering. "Monsieur Poirot, how—" Poirot raised a hand. "The scratch on your lock, it was superficial, a distraction. The red silk thread, it was not yours, nor Mademoiselle Weiss's, but placed to mislead. You knew Reinhardt was probing the blue star's origins, looted from a Viennese museum during the war, acquired by your late husband. You staged the theft to flush him out, to see if he would act. But you did not kill him." A murmur rippled through the passengers. Madame Dubois' eyes widened, while Kovacs shifted uncomfortably. Poirot continued. "The theft was a ruse, but the murder, it was real and personal. Dr. Reinhardt was no mere psychiatrist. His notebook, coded but decipherable, revealed his true work, investigating stolen artifacts, including the blue star. His questions threatened many of you, but one feared him most." Poirot turned to Ivan Petrov, whose dark eyes met his with a flicker of defiance. "Monsieur Petrov, you spoke of justice when Reinhardt was found dead. You said he stirred old wounds. Poirot has learned, through the fragments of his notebook, that Reinhardt was linked to the Bolsheviks in 1917. He betrayed your family, did he not, to the Red Guards, leading to their execution?" Petrov's jaw tightened, his voice low. "He was a traitor. My parents, my sister, gone because of him. I recognized his name in émigré circles, but I met him only on this train." "And yet," Poirot said, "you killed him. The locked door, it was no mystery. You used a thin wire, slipped through the keyhole, to relock the door after stabbing him with a dining car's letter opener. A precise act, learned perhaps in your years of survival. The red silk thread, you placed it in the Baroness's compartment to implicate Mademoiselle Weiss, whom you knew Reinhardt was blackmailing." Anna gasped, her hands covering her mouth. Petrov's eyes darkened, but he said nothing. Poirot paced the length of the table, his hands clasped behind his back. "The theft provided chaos, a perfect cover. You waited until the scream in the night distracted the passengers, then entered Reinhardt's compartment. He was awake, writing, unsuspecting. You struck, then burned the note linking him to your family's betrayal, leaving only a fragment, Blue Star and Vienna, to mislead. The typed note to Mademoiselle Weiss, it was your forgery, sent through Monsieur Moreau to lure her, ensuring she would be seen near the crime." Kovacs, his voice hoarse, interjected. "But why frame the girl? What had she done?" Poirot's gaze softened. "Mademoiselle Weiss was a convenient scapegoat. Reinhardt blackmailed her over a stolen brooch, her forged passport a secret he exploited. Monsieur Petrov, you knew this from overhearing their conversation in the dining car. You used her fear to divert suspicion." Anna's voice trembled. "I didn't know. I thought the note was from him." Poirot nodded. "You are innocent, mademoiselle, of both crimes. The true thief, as I have said, was the Baroness, acting to protect her secret. The murderer, it is Monsieur Petrov." Petrov rose, his hands steady, but his face resigned. "I do not deny it. Reinhardt destroyed my family. I waited years for justice. On this train, I saw my chance. I regret nothing." The passengers sat in stunned silence. The Baroness, her voice low, said, "I suspected he knew about the necklace, but I never imagined." She reached into her handbag, producing the blue star, its sapphires glinting coldly. "You are right, Monsieur Poirot. I hid it in my valise to test him." Poirot's eyes softened. "A dangerous game, madame, but not a deadly one." Moreau, his relief palpable, stepped forward. "Monsieur Poirot, what now? We reach Vienna in an hour." Poirot turned to Petrov. "Monsieur, you will face justice in Vienna. The law, it must prevail, though the heart of Poirot understands your pain." As the passengers dispersed, Petrov was escorted to a secured compartment by Moreau. Hastings, shaken, leaned toward Poirot. "By Jove, Poirot, you unraveled it all, the theft, the murder, the locked door. But Petrov, it's tragic, isn't it?" Poirot's voice was quiet. "The tragedy, mon ami, is in the heart's vengeance. The blue star, it dazzled, but it was Reinhardt's past that killed him. The little gray cells, they see the truth, but the heart, it mourns." The train's whistle sounded, a mournful cry, as Vienna's lights appeared on the horizon. The midnight train, its secrets laid bare, rolled into the station, its journey ending not in triumph, but in the somber clarity of justice.